Well, hello everybody. This is Life of Rocky. Now, recently got in a discussion with a guy named Scott Jameson who was coming to the defense of Mr. Ripsion, and I was trying to talk about some ideas, and he pointed out that I'd spelled the word masturbation wrong. I spelled it with an E instead of a U, and that this somehow disqualified me from having a brain. Uh, And then he come back. We went back and forth a couple of times, and I told him some of the things I'd done in my life, and I think it was just time maybe that I do a little biography because none of you people. I'm 68. None of you people know really much about me except the silver and the fossils, and a couple of rants. But I've been more or less ranting since I was a kid. When I was 18, I had to go to in front of the selective service for the register for the draft. I registered and said that I was a conscientious objector and that I wouldn't kill for political reasons. That was when I was 18. Uh, to back up a little further, at uh, 12, I announced that I was an atheist, although I'd felt that way for a considerable amount of time before that. And at 13, I became sexually active. Um, Now, the problem here was that the Army said, well, you can't be a conscientious objector because you haven't put down a religious affiliation. And I said, no, I said, I just am not going to kill for political reasons. It doesn't make any sense to me to go out and kill somebody. And that other poor guy on the other side of that rice paddy, this was before Vietnam. This was in 1961. I said that other poor guy on the other side of the rice paddy, he's just some poor guy like me, and he had a family to go back to, and brothers and sisters, and maybe a wife and kids, and certainly parents, and perhaps grandparents, and that he was shipped out and just used as cannon fodder, and there was no reason at all for him to be there, no reason I felt for me. So I said I would not kill for political purposes, and that was it. They said, well, sorry, Mr. Walters, you cannot be a conscientious objector without a religious affiliation. Now, have you ever heard anything so stupid that you have to believe in God in order to concern yourself with humanity? This is the kind of bullshit that has controlled this country for too damn long and is controlling it now with these radical Republican agenda. But plenty of time for that. This is the Rocky story. So at 18, I went off to college. Uh, went to Rocky Mountain College in Billings, Montana. Had a good old time because I wanted to see just how far away I could get away from New Jersey. Uh, drank a lot of beers and got half decent grades, nothing special. Uh, and then and I come back the second year, a little partying and so forth and so on, and I got thrown out of college, and then they turned the suspension to expulsion because a whole bunch of people uh, were upset about it, and they turned over a couple tables in the cafeteria, and they considered that a riot. And anyway, make a long story short, I got tossed. So then me and a friend went on the road, and we borrowed one of his father's cars. He was from Elmira, New York, so we went shooting out over uh, the Niagara Falls entrance to Canada, and then come back down through Sault Ste. Marie, revisited friends that were still going to school in Billings, Montana, and ended up going through California and ended up in Arizona. And he knew somebody that knew somebody that gave us a job at the Camelback Inn, which at the time was a world-renowned place, and I became a waiter and he became a busboy. And there I met a guy from Texas and a guy from Kentucky, and the four of us were supposed to go tour the West. So Bruce got in touch with his father. His father came out, offered him a chunk of a very valuable business, and Bruce decided to take it. So me and Bruce took a train home back to Jersey, and and then I picked up some things to go to Alaska with, and then thumbed it back to Arizona. And Bruce went home to become a casket mogul with his father, who owned a franchise to sell all the caskets in the Elmira, New York area. Bruce Malt was his name. But anyway, so then me and these two guys from Texas and Kentucky took off and went to Alaska. We covered all the national parks. We went in up to the Grand Canyon. They didn't want to go to the bottom, so I hiked across the Grand Canyon. They dropped me off on the south rim, and they picked me up that night on the north rim. Very rigorous hiking. It's a mile down. It's 7 miles down on the south rim, 14 miles out on the north rim. So it's a 21 mile trip, and we had I enjoyed it, and they drove the 300 miles around and picked me up on the north rim. Then we went up into Bryce and Zion, and over to Arches National Monument, and then down through Joshua Tree and into Death Valley, and let's see, and Kings Canyon, Yosemite, up through with the park where the General Sherman tree is, the largest living thing, Sequoia gigantea, up through Lassen Volcano, up in park into Crater Lake in Oregon, and then across through Mountains of the Moon in Idaho, and then into Yellowstone, which I'd been through Yellowstone previously, and I'd been to the Grand Tetons, and then up through Glacier National Park and into Banff and Jasper, and then up the Alcan to Alaska, and then drop some people off, and then turn around and came and I drove myself back to New Jersey. Got a job as a cook this summer, and I was 20 now. I've been to 49 states. I'd been to 49 states by the time I was 19, but I turned 20. And then I decided I wanted to go to all 50, and the cheapest way to go to Hawaii was as a student. So I entered a small school in Hawaii called Honolulu on Maui. This is 64, and Maui was still pretty pristine. You could go camp out on the beaches with nobody else there for a week at a time. It was very interesting, and there's some decent Maui stories that I'll leave for a later time. So I'd been now to all 50 states, and I got straight A's in Hawaii, and that got me back into school on the mainland. I decided I'd liked Oregon because I'd been up to the Jefferson Primitive area previously, and I decided to go back to Oregon. So I went to Oregon, went to school there at a little college called Mount Angel, and had a lovely time about 40 miles south of Portland. Graduated from there, and I met a Indian guy who was a professor there, and they talked me into going on to school in Bombay. So as soon as I graduated there, I flew off to the University of Bombay. I found the education system, I don't know, I won't say simple-minded, but a lot different than in America. And I decided that wasn't the program for me. And so I left Bombay and then went on to New Delhi, and I met a friend there that I met a friend in Bombay, and he had his brother meet me in New Delhi and took me around New Delhi, and I looked at the university there and wasn't happy, so then I decided, well, I come this far. Oh, to get there I had to stop. I was supposed to stop and see the pyramid, so I had a choice of going from Frankfurt to Athens to Bombay, or from New York to Athens to Tel Aviv to Egypt to Bombay to Cairo, and I decided I wanted to see I definitely wanted to see the Parthenon, but I also wanted to see the pyramids, and as I left, the 2 days before I left, the 67 war broke out, and no flights were being accepted into Tel Aviv or Cairo, so it let me spend an extra 5 days in Athens, and then I went on to Bombay, and then from Bombay to Delhi to Calcutta, Calcutta to Bangkok, Bangkok to let's see, to Hong Kong, Hong Kong to Tokyo, Tokyo to Anchorage, Anchorage to Portland, and then Portland to I stopped and spent the rest of the summer with my friend picking berries on his berry farm that I'd met the previous year, and then from there I was accepted at Villanova and at the University of Miami philosophy departments, and I decided to go to Miami because I'd been down there. I'd thumbed it down there several times in my youth. So now we'll take off at the University of Miami. Now, as a graduate student, they were paying me, and I had to teach a couple classes. That's a standard procedure, and this was my what I look like at the. This we'll get to this Air Force ROTC thing, but this was what I looked like in walking around campus in those days. Uh, this we'll get into a little later. I led a boycott against Eastern Airlines that eventually they modified their jet engines, and within a year, every jet engine in the world was so modified. Now, this is part one. I want to cut this off, and then I'm going to put up part two. I'll go with part two shortly, or maybe maybe I get another 3 minutes out of here. But this is a little scrapbook, and here you can see I've been writing letters to the editor since the early 60s. It was one of the first things I wrote at the university there, thing no cop beyond justice, and they allowed me to do a column, so the college newspaper. So as a graduate student, that was pretty rare. So I used that as a forum for environmental problems, and would lecture. I started an organization called the Gadflies, in which I was the only active member. 9 professors signed up with me because if you're if you have an organization, then you can invite anybody you want on campus, and so that made me officially an inviter. I could bring anybody I wanted on campus to speak on the university, and they had to provide a form, and they had to provide microphones and all that stuff. Now, uh, so then I got this column, and I would write editorials. But then in those days, I'd have the president of the college at my forums, and me and him would debate, and Gadfly writes his own parking tickets. They had some kind of a get together with cops on campus, and they just parked wherever they wanted to, regardless of whatever the sign said. So I thought, well, I'll stick my nose in that business. So I offered up all kinds of debates and so forth and so on. Now, one of the things that was I did these environmental what do I want to say, a lot of environmental columns, and tried to get everybody aware of what was going on in the environment. But then, I also did this Captain Guthrie we'll talk about later. Well, maybe we can talk about him now. I needed some photos. The Everglades caught on fire one year, and it was very dry down there. And the Everglades, patches of them were burning. What happens is the Everglades is one real shallow river, and it flows from Okeechobee down into the Gulf. And what happened was that as sections of it dry out, there's nothing left there but peat, and that peat might be 7, 8, 10 inches deep, and it would burn down right to coral rock, and then all those hundreds of years of peat would be just going up in smoke. Well, anyway, this Guthrie, I had met him. He was at the time a senior pilot for Eastern Airlines, and we'll pick up with the Guthrie story because I'm approaching 15 minutes, and this is the end of Rocky, thanks to Mr. Scott Jansen, who said that the claims I made were highly suspicious.